Our summer series of congregant speakers continues this week, and it's my honor to invite up our speaker this evening, Micaela Hellman-Tincher, who not only was a past Betham board member, but was also a past Batty president as well. So Micaela grew up here at Betham and has a long, rich history, and not only her history at Betham, she has been a fierce advocate fighting for social justice here within our congregation, in our broader community, our state, our country, our world. So Micaela, an honor to welcome you to our Bima this evening.
Good Shabbos, and thanks for humoring me with welcoming my words tonight. It's really fun to be in our community always, but especially when we're celebrating Amy, who I knew from Batty. So Mazel Tov, Amy. Tonight I have two stories to share, and we'll see if we can connect them together. The first takes place a few miles from here in the meeting room of the Mountain View Buddhist Temple. The room was filled with people from the neighboring community, including several dozen residents of a building nearby. Their 20 apartments were slated for demolition to be replaced with 15 townhouses. So not enough for people to move back in. The apartments that they were living in were relatively affordable. It was an older building, and most of the residents were low income. Their rent was about $1,000 less than the other similar apartments in town. The new townhouses that were coming were still much less expensive than most homes in the area, but way out of reach for these households, and there just weren't enough of them being built. So these households were certainly going to be displaced. Everyone had gathered in the room together to talk about what could be done. People shared their stories, how they had come to live in the neighborhood, what they did for the community, and what the demolition would mean to them. Then a homeowner in the neighborhood stood up to speak. "You know what's the biggest difference between me and the people living in the apartment complex?" he asked. "The biggest difference? I moved here 20 years ago. Houses were more affordable back then. That's the main difference between me and my neighbors." Hold on to that one. Let's go to the second story. "When I was little, my mom started looking for a place to send me to Hebrew school, as a good Jewish mother does. My mom started her search at a synagogue that really closely matched the one where she grew up. But there was a problem. The time of their Hebrew school classes was exactly the same time as my beloved dance classes. That just wouldn't work. So she went down the road. And the Hebrew school classes didn't conflict with dance. There were some other good things too that I think made the decision. And thus, here I am, 30 years later, in a place where not only did I go to Hebrew school, but I found a place to make lasting friendships, celebrate holidays, learn from all my community members, practice leadership, mourn my father, celebrate my marriage, and most recently, celebrate my children joining the same community." So what's the connection between these two stories? The first connection is Betham. Because my mom found Betham's Hebrew school for me, I got to be raised in the vast social justice tradition that our movement is built upon. I will never forget traveling with Rabbi Chuck Briskin, who remembers Rabbi Chuck, and a bunch of my fellow 17-year-old Battyites to Washington, D.C. to participate in the Reform Movement's Leta Ken program. The program, and if you have a teen in your life, get them to go on this program. It's really good. It's put on by the Reform Movement's Religious Action Center. I spent all weekend learning about power structures and advocacy and the Jewish values that require us to act in the face of injustice. The weekend culminated with us going to Capitol Hill to speak to congressional staff on issues that were important to us. Having already been exposed to several friends facing housing instability in our very expensive area, I spoke about affordable housing. 5 years later, I'd find myself on Capitol Hill again, this time working for the Religious Action Center, and again, working on affordable housing. And several years later, that same career led me to that community meeting with those households who were facing eviction. There's another connection between these stories, and that's luck. The luck of the moment, of being in a house that you can afford, of finding a congregation that ends up becoming your second home. To delve deeper on this theme, I'll turn to a very important to me Jewish storyteller and poet, former SNL cast member Andy Samberg. And if he's not already part of your life, Google his songs. It'll be a silly Shabbos treat for you. In a recent podcast, he and his interviewer, Amy Poehler, another former SNL cast member, struggled to describe the luck they felt with their success that they had partially earned and partially just stumbled upon. And they landed on a very famous phrase: luck equals preparation plus opportunity. In our community, and I imagine a lot of communities around the world, we spend a lot of time focused on the preparation part of this equation, for good reason. First, because we should honor hard work, especially here in Silicon Valley, where we create new things with our brains all the time. Second, because it feels like something we can control. If I work hard, I will succeed. And third, because it would be nice if we lived in a merit-based world. It seems fair. But we know that isn't feasible because opportunity, the other part of the equation, is not made available fairly. One of the reasons that moment I told you about in the first story stood out to me was that in many, many years of work on affordable housing, very few people had stepped forward and said what that neighbor of those households had said, that the housing stability that he enjoyed every day came in large part due to the luck of when he had moved here. Many times, people instead insinuate that they had earned that stability, earned their home ownership, and earned that steadiness. And of course, to some degree they had. They worked hard, they saved money, but this insinuation overlooks the opportunity part of luck, and how others, no matter how much preparation they do, will never have the opportunity to afford housing here. I'll give some examples about myself. In the early 1950s, my grandparents bought a home in San Jose. This homeownership has brought financial stability to our family that still trickles down to me. But despite all the preparation in the world, this homeownership would not have been an opportunity presented to my grandparents had they been Black and looking for housing in one of the many parts of our local community that at the time was either redlined or discriminatory towards Black homeowners. They would not have had the opportunity to bring this financial stability to me 2 generations later. This racial disparity from several generations ago still plays out today. In Santa Clara County, Black people represent over 16% of the homeless population, even though they only make up 2.5% of the population. Here's another example. I'm lucky to have been able to go to college and get a degree that afforded me a higher paying job, which allows me more financial stability. We think of college as something kids prepare for, and certainly they do. We've seen that in our families. But we also know the luck involved, the family circumstances that allow you to take on the financial burden, the ability to leave a family home that doesn't rely on you for assistance, to get through an education system riddled with its own inequalities of opportunity, especially in our area where private college application tutors are common and pricey. If I hadn't had the opportunity to go to college, I would have a lower paying job. I would have less financial stability in our high cost area, just like many of the residents of that building set for demolition. So what do we do when we acknowledge that opportunity is a large part of our luck, not just the preparation that we work so hard on? It'd be easy to say, well, that's luck. We can't do anything about it. But we know that isn't the case, luckily. We find ways to create that luck for others, to create opportunities. Sometimes those opportunities look like increasing education access, the ultimate opportunity, as so many of you here at Beth Am did via the Early Start Initiative. Sometimes it looks for fighting for immigrants' rights, immigrants whose only difference from our ancestors is the luck of timing or race. And I think we have a Rapid Response Network program on August 10th. I saw a flyer for it, another opportunity. Sometimes it looks like advocating for stopgaps that help stabilize people, like bringing more affordable housing into our community to prevent people from being displaced. There are many examples. And there's one more that I have to speak about, Gaza. It's not what I planned on speaking about tonight, but the news was so dreadful, how could we not bring it up? But also, who am I to speak about this topic? I am not particularly learned on Israel. I'm not Israeli. So many of you are learned and proficient and have done decades of work on Israel. So I'll just say this. It is the same luck of which I speak that makes us know that we have to do something to help end this war and end this dystopian method of aid distribution that is leaving much of Gaza in a man-made famine. I asked myself the same question the community member asked about his soon-to-be displaced neighbors. What's the main difference between me and a mother in Gaza? Where we were born, what group we were born into. Luck. I am blessed to be able to feed my children, to spend my worries thinking about which swim class to sign my kid up for. The mother in Gaza is too malnourished to breastfeed her child, unable to access formula. Every mother's true nightmare. I know the situation is complex, that this war wouldn't have started had it not been for Hamas's murderous rampage on October 7th, that there is unreliable reporting, and there are security threats still facing Israel. There is more going on than I pretend to know. But I do know that I can't imagine a security that is worth the starvation or murder of children. I can't abide by a war or a government that punishes civilians for the actions of militants. There's a phrase I saw a lot at protests a few years ago. This is what they prepared us for in Hebrew school. Thanks to luck and my mom and my dance class, I went to Hebrew school here at Beth Am. I've been prepared for these moments where we see inhumanity. And I've been prepared to know the values that I should fight for, that there is a spark of the divine in every person, that every person's life is a whole universe. I've been feeling very hopeless about what's going on in Gaza. It is devastating to hear that there were Israeli generals who knew the aid distribution system would cause famine. It is devastating to know that on some level, the Israeli government is acting in my name. It's hard to know what to do, but I have to listen to my earlier words, practice what I preach to myself. We can do things to try to change things for others. And there are lots of people doing things. There are Israelis protesting in the streets, calling for a ceasefire and an end to this manufactured famine. We can support them, organizations like the New Israel Fund and Standing Together. We can reach out to our leaders, our congressional leaders, and our religious leaders, the heads of the Union for Reform Judaism, to share our support for increasing pressure on the Israeli government to live up to the Jewish values that we were taught in Hebrew school. And we can continue to learn. And luckily, I'm at a congregation where I have a lot of congregants I get to learn from. So I look forward to learning from all of you about other ways I can act. I'm so lucky to be part of this community. Thank you for preparing me for every moment and for the opportunity to learn and act with you all. Good Shabbos.
Micaela, thank you so much. Always a delight to have you up on our bima. You're welcome back anytime. We'll continue on page 253 with